Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this hearing. And I want to thank the witnesses also for being here in your testimony. Mr. Brown, your story about Elizabeth kind of touched home because I had met with Summit County Department of Jobs and Family Services, which is a large county in my district. I met with their executive director because he'd indicated to me that it's very difficult to meet some of the requirements of TANF, but it's also very difficult when many of these individuals don't have their GED, and there's the education requirement. So we know that current TANF law really requires states to engage 50% of adults on welfare in certain work activities, and some activities only count for certain people or for a brief period of time. In addition, if someone works 1 hour less than the number required, the state gets no credit for that person's participation at all. And these were kind of the issues that he brought up to me and that his staff brought up to me. Last week I introduced the Preparing More Welfare Recipients for Work Act, which is folded into the larger committee discussion draft that would address this by making a number of changes, such as giving states partial credit for individuals who participate for less than the full hours required under current law, eliminating some of the restrictions on how long participation in certain activities can count toward the state requirement, and allowing participation in some educational activities to count for more individuals and for longer periods than under current law, which I think is really important and touches somewhat your Elizabeth story. Mr. Brown, do you think this added flexibility would help you better serve those families you're serving now?
Yes, I would absolutely agree with you that this is definitely a step in the right direction. However, what I would say also is beyond just more flexibility, we really want to focus more on outcomes. So for example, if someone's in education or in a community college or they're in GED, we're really focusing on those education hours. So we're counting those hours, getting logs in on those hours. How important really is that? Really what's important is what kind of progress are they making in that education? Are they finishing those classes? Are they getting credits? Are they getting those degrees or completing those degrees? We really want to focus what we're doing on progress and outcomes versus process. The other thing I would mention is that even with that flexibility and the activities that you're asking us to do, one of the other things that leads to is just more documentation and verification of those activities. It doesn't alleviate that concern. And 53% of our counselors' time is really chasing after documentation, verification of those activities. That leaves a lot less time to really be looking at what does this person need to gain self-sufficiency, to meet those employment goals. So really, what I'd like to see is that if you're going to ask us to report back on activities, it's more on what really matters. How are they approaching and progressing and meeting those goals? Employment's another example. So they're out job searching. What does that really tell us unless we know what are those leads? What employers have they actually connected with and interviewed? Employers have our counselors engaged with that can lead to employment with those folks? Just verifying hours is not helpful in meeting those families' goals.
Mr. Kelly, your thoughts on some of the flexibility?
I think it's referenced earlier that we've seen significant improvements in the education field based predominantly on some flexibility and the ability to create individual progress plans for people. I don't know how we can get away from that as being one of the significant steps as we move forward. So some of that flexibility, I think, is absolutely required. I think everybody sitting at the panel has used the word outcomes and accountability in some form. So even those of us who feel as though some additional assistance is necessary or can be tinkered with one way or the other, we are all in agreement that we should run this in a highly professional, business-like way, and you can't do that without having significant accountability steps in place. So we need outcome measures, clearly defined outcome measures, but not without enough flexibility to help the individual needs of the people involved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, I'd like to take a moment